record on this computer. All right. This is going to be a different type of call, I think. And I would love for anybody else to share experiences or ask questions or clarifying questions or like, what the heck did you do about it type questions. And so feel free to put up your hand or even just like chime in at any point and turn off your mic. I'm, I didn't know what order I wanted to put these mistakes in. Oh, and mute yourself as well, if you don't mind. I didn't know what order to put these mistakes in. So this is going to be, what do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got 7 mistakes that I've made over the years that, I mean, obviously at the time, I didn't think that they were mistakes, but looking back now, I don't regret them, but I wish that they didn't happen, or I wish I did things differently, or they set me back. And some of them are obvious and you hear about them. Some of them kind of fly in the face of conventional wisdom. And so I wasn't quite sure what order to put these in. I first thought that maybe periodic, maybe like actually do it as like a bit of a timeline. But then I couldn't quite remember what year some of them happened in. Because I even asked Allison about, I was like, what are some of the things that I really complained about back in the day? And so she gave me a few that I guess like pushed aside from my memory that I was able to make sense of, which was good. So all of that to say, there's no order really to these. We're going to bounce around a fair bit. I'll try to give you some idea of kind of what things were like at that time, if I can. But like I said, please feel free to ask any questions and pop in kind of as much as you want. So, I mean, the first mistake that I made, and I made this over and over and over again, which is why I'm so passionate about it, which is just trading a good business model for a bad business model. The temptation towards things like quote unquote online passive income or scaled type services online is just really, really strong. And so 2 separate times I built really low end membership sites as part of the PTDC. So the first one that I built was called the PTDC Inner Circle. If I remember correctly, it was $10 a month. And then if you signed up for the year, it was $5 a month. And then the second one was called the Professional Trainer Society. I can't even remember what the price of that was, maybe $20 a month or something like that. But what I didn't do, or what I failed to do, was just put the numbers together of just how many freaking customers we needed in order to make that even a reasonable amount of money. I started doing all that really attractive math, that we all do, which is like, oh, at $20 a month, if I had 200 clients, or if I had 200 customers every month, then look at how this compounds upon one another. What I failed to anticipate, though, was 2 things. One is, well, if I'm doing this as like a content thing, well, three things that I failed to realize. One is that if I'm doing this as a content thing, well, all of my best stuff is now going to be behind a paywall, which is going to really hurt my ability to generate more eyeballs, more leads. The second was just how much of my energy was towards that could have been better suited. Just because it's a good opportunity doesn't mean it's the right opportunity. And then the third one was not realizing just how quickly people cancel those things. And so, of course, I'm doing Quick Coach now, which is a software platform, which is not dissimilar in that it's a low monthly cost. But the difference with Quick Coach is that it truly does compound upon itself, because there's a stickiness to software when people are inputting their own data to it. People uploading their own clients, people uploading all of their own workouts and stuff for all of their clients. They're not going anywhere. They're certainly not going anywhere in a month or 2. And I don't have to create content in order to do it. So that's why, but still Quick Coach is completely irrelevant to the bottom line. It's something fun that I wanted to do. It's a lead generator, and it's something that, I think could become something really valuable in many years' time. But even now, a year and a half in, 2 years in or something, it's still completely irrelevant to the bottom line. And so trading out a good business model for a bad one is a mistake that I've made over and over and over again, which is why I'm so passionate about it. There's something that I wrote in the final chapter here that I want to share with you guys. It's about Betty Crocker. So one of actually the final chapters of the book that I'm writing right now is called The Passive Income Fallacy. And I tried to make sense of why we always fall into this trap of not realizing what passive income actually is and pretending that things that aren't passive income and bad business models are passive income. And so the story that I have to illustrate this is that in 1952, General Mills thought that Betty Crocker, that their instant cake mix would be an instant hit because all you needed to do was just add water and stir and bake. But the sales were really, really low and they didn't know why. So they actually hired two psychologists. And this is like, according to today, like super sexist, but this is what they actually said back then in 1952. But what they said is the two psychologists reported that the average American housewife felt guilty because the cake mix was too easy to use. And so what they suggested was to make it so the housewives needed to just add an egg. Now, this product still exists. It's one of the best-selling home and food products of all time. And I've thought a lot about why that is. And so I started looking up stories about it. There's an article in Psychology Today. It said, against all marketing conventional wisdom, General Mills revised the product instead, making it less convenient. Susan Marks, who wrote a book about Betty Crocker, said, adding fresh eggs gave women a sense of creative contribution. And then there's a management consultant who added, for many people, if success comes too easily, they can't handle it. And I think too often successful coaches get tempted by opportunities promising additional revenue streams, like myself, right? Like low-cost membership platforms, ebooks, and apps. The thought process is that active businesses won't ever make you rich, but that's simply not true. What's actually happening is a combination of boredom from the day-to-day mundanity and an overemphasis on addictive sales notifications for small and often pretty insignificant amounts of money. So to contrast this, like I have an investment advisor. He's purchased stock on my behalf in MasterCard, McDonald's, NVIDIA, amongst many others. And so on the same night that like some 19-year-old bro on Twitter is bragging about his $27 ebook sales, people used credit cards and bought Happy Meals and purchased microprocessors. And intuitively, I know that this is happening. Like whenever I check my investment accounts, it's easy to see the numbers go up more than $27 at a time. But I think the problem is that I don't check daily and I don't get notifications and there's nothing for me to do with that type of passive income, which is kind of the point, that there's nothing for me to do. But I think it's also the crux of the problem. Kind of like baking a better Crocker cake, true passive income is so easy that it kind of feels like cheating. And that's why people tend to fall prey to, call it passive income, the passive income fallacy online. And that's why I think people trade good business models for bad business models. I think that I think the best businesses on the planet are coaching businesses because they kick off so much cash up front. So long as you're smart with that cash afterwards. But they don't have the ongoing, call it dopamine hits of lots of really small sales notifications that come in. It's almost packed together. And so that's the first mistake that I made, was falling prey to that over and over and over and over again. But realizing it now and not doing that anymore. Anything anybody wants to talk about on that? Any thoughts, any examples where they maybe tried some stuff or didn't try some stuff and it worked, or it didn't work? Happy to hear it. All right, should we move on? So the second one is just over relying on data. No, I'm not a data guy. I've never been a data guy. And so I'll lead with that I don't think that there's anything intrinsically wrong with being a data-driven business. But I think that data is so easy now to collect that the mistake that I made was that I collected a whole bunch of data without thinking about what problem I was actually trying to solve or what I was actually measuring. we were celebrating as a company that we improved the conversions of a page from 0.5 or 0.75% to 1.25%, which is like a really meaningful improvement in conversion on a sales page. But we were only getting like 50 people on that sales page a day. So it's completely irrelevant addition in sales. And so then I started to think, it was like, well, what if we just stop spending the $5,000 on this consultant helping us with this and the $6,000 on this software measuring this and all of those extra expenses? And what if we just focused on getting more people to that page and not worrying about the conversions of it for a while? And what happened was that, yeah, the conversions were probably lower. I don't know. I didn't even measure, but sales went up. And so data is easy. Measuring data is easy to sell because it's easy to quantify. And a mistake that I fell into was confusing the forest from the trees in a lot of ways. And so I'm not saying don't do it. And for sure, things like measuring the amount of calls that you're having and measuring the conversions on your calls, like those are very basic, top of the funnel type data metrics, right? Those are very important to measure, but be very, very careful as you get better and better and progress in this game to really think deeply about what you're measuring and whether it really matters and whether there's just a better way to solve the problem or achieve what you want to achieve. Perhaps the best thing that building a software platform taught me was just how to really look at the importance of looking at something called use cases and what the problem actually is and what question is actually being asked and what the second order consequences are of any action. I never really had to do that before we had the software platform, but now that we do, every request that anybody makes from us, anything that we decide that we want to do, Amber and I now knee-jerk take a step back and say, okay, we get that there's this shiny object here. Cool. What are we hoping that that's going to do for us? Oh, okay. Well, is there a better way to accomplish that? And there often is. The shiny object is just what's in our face at that moment. So data is great, but data should not be the first step, right? The first step should be to say, hey, what's the biggest opportunity? What's the biggest lever that I can possibly pull right now? Okay, what's the easiest and most effective way to do that? And it's almost never going to be things like conversion optimization. I mean, that comes in way later when you're getting like, I don't know, I know a bunch of like top e-commerce guys, like it matters for them. These are people who are spending $1 million plus a month on paid ads across Meta. Like it matters for them. But they're playing a totally different game than us. Happy to have a conversation about that if there's anything that anybody wants to add. But we can move on to the next one's a fun one.
I can say something. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
we got you, Stan.
So maybe it also, for us coaches, it comes to that we want to measure so many different things like movement assessment. Oh, I'll do this, I'll measure this, I'll do that. And then at the end of the day, we don't use that much of the data we collected. And we need to see what we really need, because now I'm doing maybe 8 tests and I see after just first month, I see that 2 I will not do anymore.
Right. Right. It's interesting. I've never thought about it that way. Going back into to me, that sounds, Stan, almost like Dunning-Kruger curve. where when you start, you feel like you
Yes.
know everything. And so you're measuring everything. And then you get to a point where you're like, I know nothing. And then when you get to this point of mastery where you guys all are, it's just like, well, actually, I know enough to know that I don't actually need to, like, what matters for my client is that they move better, is that they don't hurt, and is that they eat pretty well. Was
Yeah.
that your process kind of over the course of your career? Did it kind of follow that like
I,
Mount Stupid, Valley
yes.
of Despair kind of pattern?
Yes. For sure. For sure. And also, like you mentioned, like shiny objects. I have realized I have never heard about this, but there's like a object shiny object syndrome. So the ones that I realized that it really attracts me, different things, and I really want to start this. I see, oh, this is opportunity. I want to
Mm.
go there and do this. Then there's another opportunity. I want to go there and do this. And I think the issue is there are too many opportunities that I
Yeah.
believe would be good.
Well, I think that there were always too many opportunities. I think the difference is now they're thrust in front of your face. But they're thrust in front of your face in a way that you don't actually know what's going on behind the scenes with them. And that's perhaps the most difficult part. Um, I wrote this story that I liked because I needed to add some stuff to one of the chapters. It was like, Jason had a great business. It was simple, it was profitable, and he did a good job. It wasn't famous on the internet, but it built a local reputation, old school stuff. One day, his friend Maggie suggested he build an app to scale. She had good intentions. Maggie said her friend Jennifer has one, and it seems to be going well. Jason follows a guy named Matthew on Instagram. Matthew's always posting pictures with his girlfriend traveling to exotic places and promoting his app. Does anybody know any app developers? Jason posts in an online industry group one night. Recommendations are made, sales calls are performed. Jason commits to a few $1,000s, which quickly turns into a few more $1,000s. His app is ready. He prices it at $20 a month. Why 20? That's what others do. A few friends buy to support him. Then he has to find more customers, but doesn't know how. He's never paid for ads or used social media to get customers. Unknowingly, Jason's gone from a simple business model where he needs a few customers paying him a lot to a complicated one that needs a lot of customers to pay him a little. He's learning the hardest to learn law of business. Just because you build it, they won't come. Does anybody use a good social media growth agency? Jason posts in the same group. Again, recommendations are made, sales calls are performed, Jason commits a few $1,000s. 6 months have passed. Jason's burned out. His local business is suffering. He's been focused on the app. It's time to renew his contract with the development company. He's delaying the decision by doom scrolling Instagram when a post from Matthew appears in his feed. I'm shutting down my app, it says. That story in so many different iterations is just like, Maggie said it seems to be going well. We assume Matthew is successful with his thing because he's posting pictures on Instagram. I mean, it's so easy to just fire out a post in a Facebook group and get a whole bunch of recommendations. And it leads us down this spiral where we wake up 6 months later and then realize that Matthew and Maggie weren't doing well in the first place. And so I was reminded of that, Stan, as you were saying that, the shiny object syndrome, because part of the shiny object syndrome is we don't actually objectively know if something is working well for somebody else or not. And even if we do know that it's working well for that person, we often downplay many of the actual reasons why it is and what it took to get started. And it's just hard to know all that stuff, right? So the next mistake that I made, this is a fun one, is hoping or relying in any way, shape, or form that other people are going to be able to sell my thing for me. They just can't. I came to a conclusion a number of years ago that it was going to be up to me. It was the final straw. So we've done a lot of work with affiliates in the past, and like big name affiliates, like very notable people in the industry where they would promote our programs and we would give them like good amounts of money and like hundreds of dollars per referred sale. We were sending, I had affiliate promotion rewards of like $15,000 bonus for the best vacations. We'd pay out hundreds of thousands of dollars in affiliate promotions. So like it wasn't insignificant amounts of money for a lot of these people. It was pretty notable. But still, we had to do all of the work for them to the point where we actually took over their face, like we got permission to run ads through their social media pages. And they could approve the ads. We wouldn't run them without, them seeing it. But we actually ran and paid for ads that came from their pages. So we created everything, we ran the ads, we managed the ads, and we sent them out from their pages. And we still paid them a commission. I mean, they just couldn't. There's a reason you guys are here and not many people are here. Straight up. We licensed the Online Trainer Academy to ACE. So when COVID-19 started shutting down everything, probably like March 2021, I had licensing conversations and actually purchase conversations with ISSA, ACE, and NASM. So the three biggest certifications, right? And they went on for a long time, and we ended up licensing OTA to ACE. So ACE sold OTA as its own program, call it. And they made all these incredible promises of their marketing team and their email list size and stuff like that. I think they sold 3 freaking copies. It cost us more in lawyers' fees to review the contract than we made from the entire length of the contract, which was almost 2 years. They had no ability to sell anything at any price point that wasn't 50% off, 70% off, buy now, bundle it together with these 6 things. And it's how they've built their business, right? They're an initial certification for a PT certification. And so I don't knock them. It was an instructive lesson to me. It was the final nail in the coffin that like, I'm on my own. But I spent a lot of time and I spent a lot of money having conversations with other large organizations. We had, it was the same thing with, what was it? I think it was Fitness Australia, the biggest like body in Australia, sold the Online Trainer Academy as well. They had the license in Australia and New Zealand. I think they might've sold 2. No, they might've been 4 or 5. But it was basically the same thing. Just like, they're like, yeah, we're sending an email blast to 150,000 people. I sent them a message to, hey, did the email blast go in? I didn't see a single sale. Oh yeah, we sent it out. Jesus. We built custom pages for them. We built custom integrations. So the mistake is thinking that anybody, no matter what kind of platform that they have, is going to make all of your hopes and dreams come true. It's simply not going to happen. And, it's not to say that you can't, I believe very strongly with collaborating with other people, but when I collaborate with other people, in just about every case, I do 100% of the work. And that's just the way that I've realized that it has to be. That's why there aren't many people in the position that you're in. And that's why over the 13 years I've been building a business online, I can count less than 10 people who have been consistently doing well for as long as I have. And that's not to say that I'm super smart. I've kept doing it, and I've taken accountability for it, and I have gotten knocked and gotten back up many times. So collaborations are wonderful, but like Ashley, I know that you work with some like local physicians and things like that. It's like when you collaborate with anybody locally, like to the point where you can't just say, hey, can you put this in your foyer? Like you need to print it out and walk it over to their place and put that piece of paper down on their desk.
That's what I do. Like I get it printed, like I create it, I get it printed. I'm like, hey Andy, this is for your desk. Here you go. And I
Yeah.
just put it there. And he's like, cool, thanks. That actually looks great in my office. I'm
Yep.
like, yeah, I made it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, anything on that before we move on? Like I said, we're bouncing around a fair bit here. So the next mistake was hiring really, really good consultants to solve the wrong problem. I've hired a lot of really, really smart people that were really, really good at solving problems and doing work to work on the wrong things. Spent a lot of money. I'll give you one example. I hired this consultant team. It was a boyfriend girlfriend team, and they ran one of the biggest like fitness magazines on the planet, like editor in chief, super smart when it comes to content. And now they were consultants, and we paid a lot of money. We signed, I think, a 3 month, maybe I think we worked them for 6 months, and it was something like $8,000 a month to work with them. So reasonable amount of money. And what they were doing was they inputted all of these tracking devices into our website, into the PTDC website, and they measured the traffic on the blog, and then they started sending ads and started testing ads to content, and to try to increase, viewership on the website, for example. And so they were really, really good at that. They were really good at testing headlines. They were really good at working up with ads to pay traffic to articles on the web. But so what? Who cares? Like they figured out that our most appealing article in terms of page views was on anterior pelvic tilt. Well, number one, I don't even know if that's really a thing anymore. Number two, we sold a course on online fitness business. Who cares if we can attract people to an article about anterior pelvic tilt? But their world where they came from was an advertiser model. So it was just a pure page view game. The more page views, the more advertising dollars we get. And they were really, really good at that. But it was the wrong problem. So there's a lot of people out there who you can hire to do a lot of things really, really well. Again, I guess this kind of goes back into the first, what was it, the second one, the over-reliance on data, where I keep coming back to the same point. Like, you can't do that much. I can't do that much. I think we just need to be really, really good at deciding where the biggest opportunity is and being okay that there's also going to be a lot of really good opportunities that we ignore. And that can be really, really tough, especially when you come across somebody that you admire. I mean, in this case, I admire these people. I grew up reading their magazines, and now they wanted to work with me, and they kept telling me all these nice things about what we were doing, and they were very nice, and we still talk. But it wasn't, they weren't the right people for the job that I needed. So that was a mistake. What's this? Mistake number 5. This is cathartic. What's this, Justin? You want to come on and why don't
It
you
just
unmute
reminded me
yourself?
of I hired a virtual assistant who came highly recommended from someone else who works in the industry. And after about 6 to 8 months, we both realized that I had taken almost every task back from them
Oh,
because
wow.
what I do is too specific. And they would like, okay, you're going to answer these emails. And then I would just get the same number of emails from them saying, this person asked a really specific fitness mechanics question that we can't handle. Hey, this
Right.
person wants you to consult on A, B, and C. And it sounds kind of like what you do, but last time we said yes to this, you got mad. So is this a go? And it ended up just being like, I'm just replicating emails here and paying someone a
Right.
bunch of money to do that.
So I'll get into that. The final mistake is hiring out my unique ability. So yes, I feel you. Let's have a good conversation about that. So the fifth mistake is, I mean, this goes down into sunk cost, but I defined my company by the product that we sold and not by what we're uniquely suited to do or how we could best serve people. We never launched it, but we actually built 2 brand new courses and had a third that was in development. And they've now expired, but I owned a whole bunch of domains related to the Goodman Academy of Health and Fitness. And we were going to launch something called the Goodman Academy for Health and Fitness and start putting out a whole bunch of courses. Because we're really good at building courses. Like, that's what we could do. And without even really thinking about the economics of it, and also what we needed to do to survive as a company, this is when the company was never like in the red, but it was starting to get in trouble. We needed to effectively either significantly reduce our expenses or significantly increase our sales without any additional expenses. So we're like, well, what if we put out more courses? We've sold a bunch of people one course. What if we put out a whole bunch of new courses? And we were going to sell the courses, I think, for $200 each, maybe. Can't even remember. And we just went balls to the wall doing this thing because it was in our core competency. It was something that we were familiar with doing. It was what we were good at, was building products like this. And so we didn't even think about doing it. We just went and did it. And then after a few months, I started to, I was a little bit burned out because I built 2 courses along with Alex and Amber and we were just getting started on the third one. But after a few months, I was like, well, we don't even know if anybody wants these courses, these topics. And even if we do, we don't know what people are willing to pay for them. And if we're selling these for $200, we need to sell like tens of thousands of these things. So there can't just be like a little bit of demand. Like, it needs to be pretty ridiculous. And so I did a very quick beta test with one of them where we delivered it, basically minimum viable product with it, where I read the scripts just like I'm reading or just like I'm talking into my computer right now. And we delivered it via a Telegram group, and I pre-sold it to, I think it was like 15 people, and they paid me $500 each. And these were like our top people. These are the people who would just like buy anything from us, right? And after like the second day, engagement completely died down and nobody was even going to the Telegram group. I was like, we have nothing here. We have nothing here. There's no excitement for this. Like, people need to be screaming this off the rooftops. And so that led to basically making large changes and thinking, how can we really serve our people better and do better with our business? Well, we've been talking about doing the software thing for a while. That's going to be really hard. We don't know what to do there. But I think actually more people need that than need a course on time management, for example. And then what we can do is we can focus on the mentorship, which is much more high touch, because that's where the world is going right now. Like, I don't think that the Online Trainer Academy would work if I launched it today, even if I did everything the same way. I think that the world is going to very much a whales and minnows approach, where the really high touch, high cost, high profit services where you need fewer people are wonderful. And then you use that to attract a lot more people with, either books or software or content, right? And you don't have anything in the middle. Kind of like a do-it-yourself type course. There's just no interest because people can get that stuff for free and they know it and they're burnt out on it. And so I don't think that works. So we shifted and said, what if we actually focus on, at that point, it was called Online Trainer Academy Level 2. What if we focus on OTA Level 2 and then basically cut a whole bunch of expenses and let go a bunch of staff as well, which was one of the hardest things I've ever done, and use that money to build the software. Basically learn how to build the software that we've been talking about for a while. And it's worked out well. But it's only worked out well because we got away from the thing that we were good at, and started to think about how we could actually best serve our people and build a business that allowed us to do that kind of reliably. Yeah, that Goodman Academy of Health and Fitness. I mean, it would have crushed our company. Our company wouldn't be around if we did that. And there's a couple other companies in our space that have followed that similar model. I won't name names, but it has not gone very well for them. So I'm happy that we didn't. Has anybody had any experiences like this? It could be with coaching, it could be, in a previous life, because I know a lot of you have had previous careers, which is fun, where you figured out possibly the hard way that like the way that you've always done something is not how you can continue to do the thing?
I kind of have one.
Yeah. Are you done in between your front squats? I love it, Casey.
Sorry. Big day. So I was working for a company called iFit, which is similar to Peloton,
Okay.
on camera, digital fitness,
Cool.
went full time with them. Long story short, I got like laid off with no warning, spun into like a deep depression about like what I do wrong, what am I going to do? It's been a year and a half, and like
Was it a salary
way-
position with them?
it was a big salary. Yeah, it was like my dream job, like tons of money, really low workload. Like this was at the boom of digital fitness, so they just threw a bunch of
Right.
money at me. Moved to
Yeah.
Utah, like where their studio was. Anyway, the way things have gone since then, from getting out of my head, I mean, digital fitness is crushed right now. I know all the Peloton instructors, they're doing okay, but like Tonal, Downhill, all these apps are just getting crushed. And meanwhile, I took a chance and joined this academy, and then I'm actually building something that I think is going to work much better. So that was a hard lesson to learn with that. But yeah.
Yeah, the digital fitness thing was interesting. I kind of wish, I mean, I don't wish, but it was so clear, I think, to anybody who worked in fitness that the valuations on companies like Peloton and Tonal were just completely obscene. But I would never bet against a company. Like, just philosophically, I don't short stocks. I don't want to bet. I don't want to win, based off of somebody else's demise. But it was just so obvious and so clear. And Casey, I mean, you're not the first person actually to join the online trainer mentorship from a situation like that. I won't name the other company. It wasn't iFit. It was one of the other ones, but it was the same type of thing. It was, something like, it was well over, I think, $200,000 a year that they were paying, plus like some percentage on sales, plus some stock options, which, dream
Yeah,
job.
I was up there.
Yeah, dream job, right? And what we worked on with him was, because he was the face of the thing. So what we worked on with him is like, well, you can't work like contractually, you can't build your own thing at the same time, but it doesn't mean you can't build your own audience. And so do the work for them, but at the same time, don't neglect building your own audience. So that if anything ever happens, or if you ever want to step away, you could crush it. And that's exactly what happened. Was the company is basically fire sold. I mean, they're not bankrupt, but they were acquired, and then the acquirer basically just like gave them away. And so his stock options are worth effectively $0. And he's not getting the salary or anything anymore, but he's making 3 times that with his coaching, because he was able to build the audience, leveraging the exposure that he was getting from the platform when the platform was buzzing. And so I think, I mean, it's an instructive example. I always looked at Peloton. I spoke to a bunch of people associated with the company over the years, and I was like, you guys are screwed, because your bread and butter are your instructors who are becoming influencers. And all of them can make $500,000 a year easily by buying any bike and any camera and turning it on themselves and selling coaching. How are you possibly going to afford these people Your entire model is making these people famous. How are you possibly going to afford these people? And some of them might stay, but most of them won't. Yeah, that's a good example, Casey. I mean, maybe not I think it's a good example because it's a good example that, you know, anybody in fitness looked at that digital fitness revolution. And they were just like, well, how am I going to possibly compete? Even going back to like the low cost membership and stuff. There's a guy that I follow and I love his videos. He makes some of, I think, the best, funniest, most clever instructional videos on social media. And he's coming out with an app. And there was in his story, somebody asked him, like, what makes your app different? And he said straight up, he's like, nothing makes it different. But if you like me, then you might like this app. It's like, are you actually solving a problem, or are you just contributing another commoditized solution in a world where you're competing with Netflix and Apple and Beachbody for streaming on demand fitness? You're going to get your ass handed to you. Like, you know, pretending to be kind of an amateur CTO. Like, there's just so many better models. But it's the allure of scale. It's the passive income fallacy. And I mean, I hope that he does well, and I'm sure he's going to do well out of the gate. But my question is, what's going to happen 2 years from now? You know, once the realities of having a low cost membership kick in. Anybody else want to add anything on that topic of kind of sunk cost of, you know, doing something because you've always done it that way and then you realize that you can't do it that way for any longer?
I have something.
I can't see you. I can hear. Oh, there you go. What's up, Paul?
Oh.
You're in my bottom left. I got you. Go for it.
Actually, yeah. So this is something that I've started listening to your podcast a lot, and something that you've talked about is just starting. And one of the biggest error that I made is, I was diagnosed with lupus, and I wanted to shift to working with people with autoimmune diseases. And because I had lupus and I was a high level athlete before, I thought there'd be a lot of people that wanted that service. So I went in, I got a master's to learn all the physiology and immunology. And then I started the business. And what I found out is that people with autoimmune diseases don't have enough money after paying their doctors, their health insurance, their medications, their supplements to afford a high ticket price. So after about 6 or 7 months of business, I had to completely transition back to what I was doing before I did 4 years of school, where I could have taken that money and invested in a business coach 4 years ago, beat the market on social media, all that stuff, and been probably a lot further than where I am right now. So part of it was just not testing a minimal viable product early on to see if there was any interest. And that kind of really screwed me over. Not screwed me over, you know, I'm here now, but set me back a couple of years.
I think the point that you're highlighting, Paul, which is such a good point, is that you don't need to make the majority of your money from the people you ultimately want to help. In fact, I think in many cases you shouldn't. It's a mistake to. The example that I give all the time is if you are passionate about dental hygiene in the developing world, the correct business to start is not a cheap toothbrush company that sells toothbrushes to the developing world. It's any business that makes the most amount of profit possible so that you can buy toothbrushes and donate them. And that's a good example because it's so obvious, and it's much less obvious when it's us, of course. But studying and doing the degree that you did, I mean, probably was super instructive and helpful for you and was super interesting. But I agree, like, is there a market for it? And is the market, not just is there a market for it, right? Are people, to me, there's two aspects that you need to consider, right? Are people willing to pay and are people able to pay? And you need to validate both before you go full bore into something. And it doesn't mean you can't support the lupus community. Doesn't mean it can't be a big part of your story. But you don't need to build a business around them just because you want to serve them. My opinion is it's already hard enough to start a business and do this thing. Let's not make it any harder than it already is. There's a lot of people who have a lot of money who are willing to pay a lot of money for coaching. And there's a lot of people who aren't. And it's much easier to sell to the people who are and then serve the people who aren't. I mean, that's the entire Wills and Minnows approach. That's my entire philosophy, really. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Of course.
You can do one more if somebody else has something to add on this
I have
topic.
a question, John.
Yeah. Oh, Paul, what's up, man?
Hey, is there value in having like a lower cost offering as part of a value ladder for the people who can't or won't spend the money for the higher ticket stuff? So they may be bought into your brand or you or your philosophy, but they're not going to afford.
Yes, possibly. If you do it a very specific way, there can't be any expectation of service, and it needs to be primarily viewed as a marketing asset. And so that's why I like books. Right? So Whales and Minnows is free or expensive. That's how I run my business. It's either free or it's expensive. There's nothing in between. Now, when I say free, it's not just free, it's no expectation of service. And so I like books because nobody buys a book and expects the author to teach them on that book or support them through the journey of reading that book. I also like books because they're final when they're produced and then you can move on to the next thing. But they're also really, really hard to do. So I don't know. Pick your poison, I guess. I don't think that there's any value in a low-priced, low-service type offering. I think you're much, much better off. I think you're much better off putting your attention and time onto either free materials or lead generator materials. My books are 100% lead. It's 100%. The books make reasonable money, but insignificant amounts of money when it comes to the company's bottom line. And even the book that I'm writing right now, and even the Obvious Choice book, I got a very nice advance, which I'm super grateful for. But the reality of it is it won't affect the bottom line in any way. It's something that I'm writing because I can't not write it, if I'm honest. But the majority of my books are used as lead magnets, 100%. They're lead magnets. They're a way for people to buy in and go deeper with me that aren't ready to go as deep with me as you all are. I want the online trainer mentorship to be aspirational. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not in this for 3 months. I'm not in this for 6 months. I've been doing this for 13 years. I'm going to do this for another 13 years. And so I'm in no rush to convert somebody today. Instead, what I want is when somebody is ready for a service like this, I'm the obvious choice for it. I'm the person that they know that they're going to join when they're ready. And they don't even look anywhere else. And so that's why we have, a very strict, like, aspirational target for a lot of people, which is, I mean, I think a low target, but an aspirational target, which is, you have to be doing a minimum $1,000 a month online. I think something like that is good because then people, know it's like once they hit that point, they can give us a call. If there's something like that can exist with your services, that could be very useful. But I don't think that there's a place in the types of businesses in the type of business that you have, Paul, for, call it a low service, but some service, but lower cost thing for people who can't afford to work with you yet. I think you look at that as most people can't afford to work with me. Some can. I'm going to sell to people who can. and not worry about somebody saying, oh, I'd love to do it, but I can't afford it, because you can say, oh, you know, here's this book, or here's like even just like a referral program to an app or something. Like, why are you building it yourself? Beachbody or whatever it is. If somebody would like find a program that you like and you want to and you think does good work. But I mean, I obviously created Quick Coach. Quick Coach isn't the right service for a lot of people. I still recommend other services, and I recommend them with affiliate links. I'll tell you something funny. I make more money every single month as commissions, as affiliate commissions, from other software companies that I've referred people to than I do from Quick Coach. Which is, and I don't have to do anything, right? So you're still supporting these people, I guess is what I'm saying. And you can still get paid for it, and you don't need to provide the service to lower end customers.
Helpful. So that psychology of somebody who might spend $5 with you is more likely to spend, say, 500. That doesn't apply, or is that just nonsense?
Say that again.
I guess I'd heard this sort of philosophy that, or psychology, that somebody that'll spend a little bit of money with you is more prone or likely to spend more later as they get, you know,
Yeah, they might.
bought in.
They might. But I don't think that I don't think that it needs to be with you, right? Like, it could be as a result of you. Like, they could spend that $5 on another service that you recommend, and then realize that they want more accountability than that service is providing, and they want an actual coach. Or it could be on, you know, a digital ebook or something that supports them, that has a program. It doesn't need to be $5 on a automated, I'm sending you workouts, you know, group fitness plan or something. So I don't disagree. I think that there is kind of a value ladder, but I also think that a value ladder can get us really, really distracted from, you know, like, you think about the end of the day, what you're really doing here. It's like you're charging, like, what are your packages, Paul? What do you charge?
Signature program is 1,800, and the annual renew is 5,000.
So you got to sell a lot of $5 and $10 items to make that.
Yeah.
Like a
For sure.
lot. I don't do public math, so I'm not doing that math, but like, that's a lot of humans. And then you think about customer service, you think about administration. I mean, your margins are going to be smaller on those customers too.
Yeah. No, I like the idea.
Potentially, not
like
always.
Yeah, I like the idea of it as a lead magnet. I mean, that makes great sense to me, especially if it's priced like a book.
Yeah, a lead magnet could cost a few bucks, right? A lead magnet doesn't have to be free.
Right.
A lead magnet could cost a few bucks. Okay, let's get to the final mistake here. And they both have to do with hiring. I mean, I wrote them as two, but they both really have to do with hiring. And so really, I mean, the first is committing to people too quickly, like making a commitment. Like, I hire quick, but in the past, I've hired quick and committed to people long-term too quick. Whereas now what I do is I do a lot of test projects, and I'll often hire multiple people for the same job, and I'll give each of them the same test project, because I want to see the quality of the work, but really what I want to do is see whether we vibe working together and see how easy you are to work with. So I'll give you an example. We had somebody who was in charge of our editorial years back that I brought on, and I really liked her and I really respected her work before we worked together. And I was really excited when she left her previous position that she was available, and I offered her a job. Within about a week, I knew that it wasn't a good fit. It took me about 1.5 years, though, to make that move, because I had committed to her. Now, I think that I probably would make that move faster now that I'm more mature in business, but I had committed to her. She had shut down everything else that she was doing. And that's not fair to her. Even though she was a contractor, technically I could have said goodbye, but it's not fair to her. She was like a $90,000 a year contract or something. Whereas you contrast that with Ray, who's the lead developer for Quick Coach. And we did test projects for about 6 months before I committed to him. He built a prototype as part of our product innovation. And he built a series of prototypes with us. We paid him for every single one, of course. But I believe very strongly in you go for coffee a few times, then you go for dinner. Then you maybe have them over overnight. So number one is I committed to people too quickly. I do think hiring quickly is good for the types of businesses we have, but I think hiring quickly without making commitments and doing test projects is important. And then the second part goes back into, our conversation, Justin, earlier, where I hired out my unique ability. Like I hired out this thing that I was good at. How silly is that? I had 3 copywriters at one point writing in my name. How ridiculous is that? That's what I do. I write and I'm good at basically designing coaching systems. I'm not good at working in coaching systems. You guys would be miserable if I was your success coach. Absolutely miserable. I'd be terrible at it. But I'm good at designing those systems. So when looking to hire, the mistake that I made was thinking you need to delegate everything. What I realized was I really am actually very good at only 1 or 2 things. I need to make sure I do those things. And I need to make sure I give myself the space to not do the other stuff. And just do more of those. What do you want to hit on there, Justin?
It sounds, I wish I had thought of that before I hired the virtual assistant for 8 months at however many thousands of dollars that was.
Yeah. I mean,
but yeah, it was exactly that. It was, they ended up coming back and saying, it turns out your business, you don't have a business, you have a job, which I agree with, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just me. I'm the centerpiece of this whole thing. But it turns out you're the only one who can service 95% of what goes on here because you've built it in this relatively unique way.
Yeah. Yeah. And you might decide to change that, or you might not. There's this everybody always talks about how you shouldn't trade your time for money. And I actually disagree with that a little bit. I think that if you love what you do and it's kicking off more than enough cash and profit, I think that you should trade your time for money. I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that you should be smart with your money. I think that you should increase the value of your time. I think that you should charge a lot. But I don't think it's a bad thing to trade your time for money. I don't think you necessarily have to, like I don't, but I don't think it's a bad thing to do it. I also, this goes into the mistakes for sure, but it's also just kind of a belief that I have of where the world is going and where the marketing world is going, which is, I think the returns on the volume of content, on high volumes of content, is going down at a very rapid pace. It's just simply too easy to create content that's actually relatively good these days. For example, I know people who literally go through Twitter. They have ways to search through Twitter at the highest performing tweets across Twitter, not even theirs, on certain subjects. Just like, what's the highest performing tweet on Twitter from fitness during this week, right? And they take that tweet and they feed it into ChatGPT and they say, write me a LinkedIn post that's similar to this tweet. And then they copy and paste that into LinkedIn. And they're building up audiences. And there's an array of tools that allow you to do video editing, chop up videos, whatever. It's never been easier to create a lot of volume of like reasonably good content. I think the value and the returns of that is going to go down very, very fast. I think it already is. But as that's happening, I actually think the returns of really, really high quality is going to go up. like really high quality, like stuff that you can uniquely do. And you don't need to do as much of it. A lesson that I've learned, and then a mistake that I made when I ignored it, was 85 to 90% of my traffic across everything I've ever done has been from, it's not even an 80-20 rule. It's like a 98-2 rule. Has come from like 2% of the things that I've done. I've written 11 books. One of them has done well. I created 6 online programs, hosted 5 conferences. One of the online programs did well. Now, the other ones didn't do badly. Some of them did. Most of them didn't. The other books didn't perform badly. But like 95% of the returns came from one book and one program. Content across the PTDC, 98% of our traffic would come from 3 to 5 articles. My Instagram account, 95% of the growth has come from basically 10 posts that I just repost every 3 or 4 months. And what I'm going to be doing is actually decreasing my volume considerably and spending a lot more time on quality. And that goes into hiring out, I think, in unique ability as well. Like, what can you uniquely do that is kind of special? Can you figure out a way to do a lot more of that and just less of all the other crap that you feel like you should do but secretly don't want to do? That was fun.